Welcome to South of Left Field. My name is Jimmy, and I'm going to be going on with part two of walking across the field here. In part one, I talked about how in my early years I was raised in a very conservative environment. I took on all of those attributes, and various points in my life, one particular crisis I talked about, I found that the philosophies and the ways in which the conservative view looked at how society should be run and looked at how people should be treated and judged didn't work for me anymore. So now, doing what is very typical and very human, I jumped from right field to left field. Now, sitting over there in the left field stand and watching the political game going on, I thought perhaps I had found my place. Now this was not an immediate jump. I mean, this is an evolution of some years, but I found that a lot of the attributes on the left side were attractive to me. They made sense to me. They rang with truth. And the biggest divide, I think, between right and left is how people view one another. Now, I've said earlier and several times in the various videos, America is made up of its citizens. America is made up of Americans. You cannot have an America without the citizens. And the conservative view of citizens is very hierarchical, very authoritarian, and I guess the bottom line is your acceptability, your position, if you will, in the class hierarchy is decided pretty much by your wallet, by any particular power you may have accrued with or without a nice fat wallet, and is heavily influenced by your skin color. Now on the left, this is where you found the odds and sods, if you will. This is where the gay community resides. This is where the black and brown and yellow communities tend to reside, I believe, because the prejudices that exist in the country, the prejudices that exist in our economic structure and in our legal structure, this is where the refugees, if you will, of those prejudices turn to try and get a better deal, a fairer shake in the world. Now, even as a very young man in junior high school, when I finally broke down and asked a fellow student, well, what is civil rights? Because all this mess was going on in my youth, and I really didn't know what it was. I grew up in isolation on a dairy farm. And so my access to news, wider news of the country and the world, was pretty darn limited. They told me, oh, well, these people want to have the same rights we do. I didn't see anything that was wrong with that. And really, I guess that encapsulates a big part of my personal philosophy in life. And the idea that the phrase drawn from the Declaration of Independence, that all men, or wherever it was drawn from the founding documents, that all men are created equal, it's really all humans. All people are created equal. And it's not that they're created equal, but that they are created and should have the same rights, one to the other. A right to an education, a right to medical care when you are ill, a right to be treated and healed. The idea of a strong military requires the presence of a commitment from soldier to soldier. You have your buddies back. You take care of one another. You watch out and watch over one another. Because if you don't, nobody's going to watch out for you. And if you're not being watched out for in a hostile military situation, you're likely to be the first one to go down. Well, the same thing can be said for, citizens and society for a lot of reasons. And I first had to rely on a social network when I had a severe job loss, went through a bankruptcy. Food stamps was how the family had to be fed because I just couldn't find work. It wasn't that I was lazy. And so things like this are found in the rhetoric of the Democratic Party, what I thought at the time was the left, and it was more left than it is now. And so I felt like I had found a home. I mean, yeah, okay, I'll admit I'm uncomfortable around same demonstrations of same-sex affection, But you know what? That's my problem. And as far as I'm concerned, they have every right and justification to love and care for whoever they choose to love and care for. Um, so this evolution that moved me to the left seemed to match the expressions of the Democratic Party. And so that's where I stayed for quite a while. Now, as you know from the title, South of Left Field, I dropped out of the whole thing. So going from the stands on the right side of the field, going to the stands on the left side of the field, why was I unhappy with the left? Well, there's a growing problem in American society today. And we all bemoan the fracturing of the society, the radicalization, the increasing expression of power of the people in the very radical right and the very radical left. And it seems as if we have lost the ability to work together. I mean, really, we've lost it. We've lost it. What happened? Fundamentally, what has happened in our society, and it's reflected in our political structure, is that we have lost the commitment to one another. We have surrendered, if you will, a willingness to look at somebody on the other side of the field and say, you know what, you're a citizen too. So I'm not going to deny you your rights just because you're over there and I'm over here. I am not going to deny you justice. I am not going to deny you good health. I am not going to deny you access to education. I'm not going to deny you these things just because we have this disagreement between us. Because when push comes to shove, I'm going to have your back and you can count on me having, and I can count on you having my back. That's the way a strong, well-founded nation behaves, because that's how a well-founded society behaves far more often than not. Why did we stop having this sense? That's hard to say. I'm convinced that this turning inward and isolating one from the other is grounded in a fear that we all have less and less. And you see, if you're going to say, I'm going to support my fellow citizen, then you have to be willing to give of yourself. This means give of your time, or your attention, or your wealth, or whatever other resources, contacts, and information you may have. Sharing is something that human beings are born with. Small children exhibit it, even to their own detriment. If I've got one, 2 pieces of candy and that's all I've got, and somebody else is another little child is crying, you give them one of your pieces of candy. You have what you have. You see, this is instinctual. We're born with it because we are a social species. We survived because we cooperated. We survived because we worked together. I thought that was what the Democratic Party, I thought that's what the left was all about. And what I found out over the years was, well, it is, but it isn't. What am I talking about? Yes, the Democratic Party pushed civil rights. Yes, the Democratic Party pushed, gay marriage. Yes, the Democratic Party went after many of these issues, these prejudices, if you will, and sought legislation to limit or try to mitigate these behaviors, because these sort of prejudices are divisive. They break a society apart. And so like the right-wing Republican Party who staked out their positions, the left-wing Democratic Party staked out their positions. And while we squabbled over how it's expressed and we squabbled over how it's categorized and regulated by law, the Democratic Party is so fractured. The Democratic Party is blind to the question, does not care to ask the question, does not pursue the issue of what is causing this heightening, this fracturing. What is it that is generating fear that prevents us from supporting one another? I say the biggest driver is inequality, financial inequality. People are becoming more grasping. People are becoming more fearful because people are becoming more uncertain. We don't have a social net, and the doors and ladders and windows that we climb up and through to try to advance ourselves in society have largely been closed off and withdrawn from the lower classes. Education, which used to be more easily available, now is hideously expensive, and you practically have to indenture yourself in debt for life if you're part of the lower classes and you want a higher level education, if you can even get it at all. Of course, the upper classes, they have no problem with it. You reach in your pocket, you throw some of your pocket change around, boom, your kid's in Harvard, your kid's in a state university, and you can afford the cost, and they start their life with a good education and no debt. Oh, Lord have mercy, how many Americans can't do even that much? Yes, I left the left because I found out that the left was made up of nothing but members of the upper class who were playing a particular game to address issues that did not resolve inequality. And it is inequality and the fear and the despair and the struggle that inequality imposes on us that weakens our society, that weakens each other, and we need to come together and find a way to address it. And that path is not going to be found on the right or the left, because these are upper class people in upper class parties, funded by the upper class, working with the upper class, and they don't know us from Adam. So I dropped out of the left. Now, there will be a part 3, and part 3 is going to talk about what was wrong with Centerfield, because I didn't come to rest in Centerfield either. But I spent some time in Centerfield. It took me some years to understand the fallacy of being there. It's not a good place to be. So until next time, thank you for watching. I hope you will choose to like it. I hope you will choose to share it. And again, thank you for watching.